Hello there. Thank you so much for joining us. This is News Channel Nebraska. My name is Eric McKay. Let's take a look at our top headlines today. Omaha Mayor Jean Stothert yesterday said she signed a disaster proclamation that will pave the way for state and federal funding as the area recovers from last week's storms. Those resources already being deployed to help neighborhoods devastated by the tornado. City and county officials also pushing for waivers that will make cleanup and recovery efforts a bit easier for those most impacted by Friday's tornadoes. Volunteers have been coming in droves to lend a hand to those most directly impacted, but officials continue to urge anyone who wants to help to call 211 first.
It's coordinating that help and making sure that they get the right things that they need and get it to the people that need it the most.
Early estimates have 100 to 150 Omaha Metro homes impacted by Friday's storms, about 50 of them completely leveled. But city officials say they're still surveying some areas with drones. Concerns about looting, meanwhile, in the aftermath of those tornadoes, finds one man booked for having burglary tools near the hardest hit neighborhoods. Joe Jordan has our report.
From the moment the tornadoes hit, Good Samaritans have poured into Elkhorn and Bennington neighborhoods to help, but not without some downsides.
Many people have lost everything. There's a lot of looky-loos who are very curious. Please do not drive into these impacted areas.
First responders seeing that impact right from the start.
Our crews driving into the neighborhoods as our neighbors were literally crawling out of their damaged properties, and our firefighters reported the shock that they could see on our neighbors' faces.
It literally crossed the interstate. Had a lot of debris over here, a lot of damage. It's gonna be some issues out here.
Issues beyond the all too obvious cleanup and starting over. The sheriff receiving reports of looting in the area.
We will have extra patrols for the foreseeable future. We definitely do not want to make it easy for anybody who wants to victimize those people. Our partners in law enforcement and the sheriff's office will intercept you.
In Omaha, Joe Jordan, News Channel, Nebraska.
Two brothers, meanwhile, from Elkhorn survived the real-life nightmare of being sucked out of their home by the tornadoes. Roger Slatton says he just left for work on Friday when his friend called to tell him a tornado was spotted near his home. Roger says he turned around, called ahead to his brother Royce, who was at the house, told them to find their two dogs and get to the basement. But by the time Roger pulled into the driveway and ran inside, he said it was too late. 136-mile-per-hour winds ripped them from the house.
And we could just hear, the windows just go boom. They all exploded, and under our feet, the floor went it jolted a couple times, and then we just took off. Both of us were, the moment before we took off, we were both trying to head down the stairs, and we kind of looked at each other, and it was, for a long while I was certain that was the last time I ever was going to see my brother.
I was thrown out of the house. I remember coming this way and then ripping out towards the back after the house lifted, and I remember hitting the ground and then kind of coming to afterwards and just feeling the whole house just ripping into my back.
Their house was destroyed. Roy said he required 22 stitches, says it's still painful to walk. Roger suffered multiple bone bruises, cuts, and was punctured in the back by a nail. Their dogs also survived. With tornadoes in the rear view, more possible tornadoes potentially this week. Andrew Pfeiffer has more on what you need to know to stay safe.
Well, as of this last weekend, we obviously all saw that tornado season is officially upon us, and I think the most important question that poses is how do you stay safe? How do you keep your family safe, and what to do in severe weather circumstances?
Severe storm season has just begun, and safety needs to become a priority.
When thunder roars, go indoors.
Many houses in Nebraska have already suffered the treacherous path of multiple tornadoes on Friday night.
If you can go to an interior room without windows, that's the best way to do it. If there's any way possible, go to a ground floor.
Now, guys, this is why safety during severe weather is absolutely not a joke. I'll go ahead and take a step inside this building and just give you guys a look as to how damaged this building actually is. The door is just stationary in the wall, and the building is completely destroyed. This is the Norfolk Athletic Training Facility, just a couple miles outside of Norfolk.
The biggest hazard with a tornado is flying debris. And sometimes that flying debris, it may be coming down. It may start raining debris depending on how that storm has matured and what phase that storm is in.
With debris being the number one hazard when it comes to severe weather, lightning follows close behind.
If you see that thunderhead, that lightning can travel up to 10 miles away from the thunderstorm. A lightning bolt's hotter than the surface of the sun, plus the decibels coming off that it's going to give you a headache.
It is recommended to go to a basement. If where you live does not have a basement, officials say go to a room with absolutely no windows. It is also important to make sure you have plenty of time beforehand to prepare during the watch alert.
Tornado watch does not mean go outside and watch it. A tornado watch means you have time to prepare. You can look at your watch and you've got time to review your plan.
We want to give people more time to seek shelter. That's the biggest goal there.
Now, there is a possibility that northeast Nebraska could be experiencing some more severe weather on the way tomorrow, as well as some potential tornadoes. So be on the lookout and stay tuned to NCN for more weather coverage. Reporting in Norfolk, Andrew Pfeiffer, News Channel, Nebraska.
In other news, Nebraska's congressional delegation was united in voting for last week's package that sent funding to allies overseas and sent a message to other nations. The bill, signed by President Joe Biden over the weekend, sends $95 million in aid to Ukraine and Israel, among other allies. This week, NATO Security General criticized the allied members, saying delays in additional support have allowed for setbacks in Ukraine's efforts to drive back Russian forces. But U.S. Senator Pete Ricketts of Nebraska tells News Channel Nebraska that even without this funding package, the U.S. has been showing its support in other ways.
Democracies are messy, and it takes time to go through this. So I don't know that it actually does us any good to look back and say, well, Ukraine could have done this or that. There's no way to know for sure. Certainly when they had lots of our materials, last summer for their offensive, they underperformed our expectations. So I think it's important that we continue to support Ukraine.
Now, the second and perhaps more controversial portion of the bill sees the U.S. telling TikTok's Chinese owner ByteDance, sell or else. The bill gives the popular social media account 9 months to divest ownership or it will be banned in America. Now, millions of Americans use TikTok, many of whom have found ways to make money utilizing the app's promotional power. But Senator Ricketts says TikTok has become a major news source, particularly for young people, and that means it needs additional scrutiny.
We need to continue to fight, the misinformation that's being put out there. But when it's being done in an organized way by a Chinese Communist Party owner, I think that's where you see the difference. Again, TV stations, radio stations have to be owned by Americans. We ought to require the same thing for these applications like TikTok. And again, it's not just TikTok this is impacting. It's any application that's owned by a foreign adversary. So, and again, it's not a ban because we're allowing them to operate if they just divest to an American owner.
While TikTok is currently in the crosshairs in the U.S., it's already been banned in many other countries, including Canada, India, and Australia. One of the newest consolidated school districts in Nebraska comes from the southeast region of the state. Jake Bartecki has more.
A pair of southeast Nebraska schools are set to become one in 2025. Exeter, Milligan, and Friend Public Schools will consolidate for all activities and academics. Paul Sheffield currently serves as the superintendent at Exeter, Milligan, and says the consolidation will expand learning by having more teachers.
We look at being able to expand, an example just in the music and fine arts. We'll have a music teacher that will do vocal, and we'll have a music teacher do instrumental, instead of one person doing everything.
Currently, less than 9 miles separates the two schools. Derek Anderson is the current superintendent at Friend, but will become the soon-to-be Bobcats full superintendent. He explains relationships were built between the two schools before even co-oping.
Even before co-op, we were showing up to each other's games. When we weren't even playing together, we would cheer for each other. There was a lot of camaraderie already there. The students didn't bat an eye too much. I mean, there were some things that they knew that they would lose out on. We were going to move up a couple of classes in terms of our athletics, but there wasn't much from them in terms of any concerns.
After a year full of sports co-op, Sheffield says the time was right for consolidation, but the issue of low enrollment was also a factor.
So over 22 years between Exeter Milligan and Friend, we've lost 320 students. And so that's part of the conversation. The other part is with the co-op of athletics, the kids, when you go to an activity, you don't know which one is an Exeter Milligan kid, you don't know which one is a Friend kid. They get along fine. I don't want to call it the perfect storm, but it just seemed to work out to where consolidation, the opportunities we can provide for our kids is just better together than we can separate.
And Anderson echoes the message of importance in a full sports co-op to the transition.
You could definitely tell at the end of every season, the kids felt more comfortable with each other on the court, on the field, whatever the case was. That's just going to make things a lot easier for the kids in terms of transition with academics as well.
In Exeter, Jake Bartecki, News Channel, Nebraska.
Volunteers who help preserve Nebraska's largest public collection of lilacs received honors on Arbor Day in Nebraska City. Dan Swanson has more.
The 2024 Arbor Day Tree Planters of the Year added a few lilacs to their backyard in Lincoln as part of a pandemic project, and soon we're taking assignments from the International Lilac Society to join the Western Hemisphere Preservation Committee and document the Max and Darlene Peterson Lilac Collection at Arbor Lodge State Park.
And it was an opportunity for us to volunteer to help restore and kind of bring the lilac collection back into more pristine shape.
The Society recognizes 2,000 lilac cultivars, so the 135 specimens on the Mueller's Lilac Tours over the weekend were just a sample. But the tour offered talking points about fragrance, color, florets, and cultural significance shown by so many immigrants bringing the lilac here. The Tree Planter Award winners put in about 200 hours each last year, pulling poison ivy and removing competing plants. Mueller said the collection is the largest public setting in Nebraska and ranks high among the most diverse in the nation.
And so we're working as part of our Preservation Committee assignment to identify those cultivars to make sure that they're nurtured and cared for, with the hopes of eventually being able to track them and perhaps share them more widely in the future.
From Nebraska City, I'm Dan Swanson, News Channel, Nebraska.
And you can stay up to date with the very latest by following us online. Head to newschannelnebraska.com. Click on the News tab there. You can also follow us on X, like us on Facebook and Instagram as well. Thanks for joining us. Have a great day. You're watching News Channel Nebraska.